Mega Man 1 is hard. From my understanding, Mega Man 1 was not all that popular and didn't sell well. It was a surprise to many that it even managed to get a sequel because of how bad it did. I've heard people claim it's because of the box art, but I don't know how much of an effect this ugly work of art actually had on the sales, since many NEX box arts were weird and I'm not sure if all of the weird ones had terrible sales. Usually, if a game was good, everyone bought it. I feel like Mega Man 1's is just memed because Mega Man is a popular series and it's an ugly, like really ugly box art, but I could be wrong. However, I've seen plenty of arguments claiming the poor sales were due to the game's difficulty, and I could totally see that being a thing. Word spreads quickly, and given how much easier Mega Man 2 was and how well that game sold, I think I lean towards the difficulty affecting sales arguments. I decided I'd run through this game without looking up the weakness order. The only thing I could remember was Bomb Man being everyone's first stage to go to, so I went with that. For the uninitiated, Mega Man games usually have 8 boss robots you have to defeat. This game I think is the only one with 6, but I could be wrong. Anyway, you can play through the stages to defeat the bosses in whatever order you like. Every boss you defeat allows you to gain their weapon, and every boss has a weakness against another boss's weapon. But it's not explicitly stated as to what the weaknesses are. Which means players without a guide are meant to run through stages and make it to a boss and experiment with one of the special weapons to see if it knocks it down, or resort to fighting against the boss with your default pea shooter and hope it's enough to take them down. The catch is, if you make it to a boss and you can't defeat it, you basically ran through the whole stage for nothing, and now you have to pick a different stage to play through and hope you can defeat the boss there. It's a very interesting system and one that allows you to experiment with multiple paths or decide your own difficulty in some sense. It's kind of brilliant. I've heard of people who only play through these games with a pea shooter, as they feel the special weapons take away the fun and challenge of the game. And I've seen other people say the only way to really enjoy this game is to go through its intended weakness order, otherwise it drags on too long and isn't enjoyable. I think I land somewhere in the middle. I personally played through this game twice for this video. One time was for my first playthrough. It's the one you're seeing footage of. I kinda tried to pick the correct order, but I wasn't very successful at it. There was only one instance, however, where I got to a boss and couldn't defeat them and had to redo the level at the end. And honestly, when I redid that level, it was way more enjoyable because I had already learned the challenges. Due to this being an NES game, it was designed in a manner that would have you run through multiple screens. In the case of Mega Man 1, the amount of screens averaged to around 22 or 23 per stage, and they offered various challenges that you had to overcome to get through. Those challenges usually just being some moderate to difficult enemies, but some screens also just had death spikes or bottomless pits or a random puzzle. These screens are the meat and potatoes of this game, and how enjoyable a stage is completely contingent on how hard the challenges in these screens are. And it's not that I'm against the challenge. My issue is some of these challenges are totally unreasonable and flat out unfair. Keep in mind you have to run through these stages in boss fights in 3 lives, aside from the rare occasion that you run into a 1-up. Fortunately, if you lose a life, you're usually not sent too far back and your health is regenerated. And if you get a game over, you're starting fresh from the beginning of the stage. There may or may not have been an occasion where I started a stage, realized I was on my last life, so I gladly got myself killed so I could restart the stage with all my lives. The only punishment is your score restarts, but the scores, like many games of this era, were irrelevant. I had to redo one of the stages because I didn't have the correct weapon, and I couldn't defeat the robot boss. When I replayed the level, I found it a lot more enjoyable though. I still found the replay difficult, but it was less experimental and more of a test of what I've learned before. It's a feeling that I largely associated with the Sonic games I played. The first playthrough is to learn the stage, and the second playthrough is to test yourself. I really wanted to start my script shortly after finishing the game, but something kind of felt off. I felt like I didn't really play the game. After all I could think about was how short and brutally difficult the game was. So I decided to give it another go. No capture card, and I played it handheld while laying on the couch rather than on my desk. I got in the zone, and dude, I loved my second playthrough. I loved it so much I actually regretted not recording the second session. I still lost a bunch of lives and got myself a game over or two, but this time around, when I saw an enemy, I knew what I was meant to do. I knew which ones to avoid, which ones I could defeat easily, and which ones I didn't have to waste ammo on. And most importantly, I knew how Mega Man felt to control. From my understanding, this gets fixed in the next game, but Mega Man is super slippery in this title, which is terrible because there are many fine margins for challenges you have to overcome over death pits. I actually figured out that in instances where I had to be accurate, it was easier to try and platform across those sections quicker rather than slow down to think, which made them a lot more enjoyable because I felt like I was at home in the Mushroom Kingdom with all my confidence in my ability to hop around on a block. I was in the zone. Funnily enough, the robot bosses were the most underwhelming parts of my second playthrough because I knew the order now. I knew how to make sure I'd defeat them with ease, or at least more ease than before. And even after I got through the 6 stages, I found Wily's endgame to be much more bearable the second time around. Now make no mistake, I have to reiterate, even on the second playthrough, this game destroyed me. It almost made me rage quit more than once. But regardless, the second time around was a much better experience than the first. I know this game isn't really all that revered in the grand scheme of things. I think it suffers from the same first game in the franchise syndrome that many other games suffer from. I can easily compare this to Mario Party. Nobody looks back at the first game as fondly because of how brutal it was, but the foundations that game set created a chain of games after it that will not soon be forgotten. Many people have nostalgia for Mario Party 2, citing it as the first good game in the series because it kept the 90% good from Mario Party 1 and removed the 10% brutal. I think the Mega Man series has a similar experience, because as you all likely already know, many people still say the second game is the best one in the series. But don't forget that Mega Man 1 still has 90% that's good. It's a hard game, yes, especially on your first playthrough. But keep in mind, not only was it my first time playing this game since 2017, it was my first time playing any Mega Man game in that time frame. So a lot more of the rust that comes with learning or relearning how to play a game existed than it probably should have. In today's age, I recommend playing Mega Man 1 after playing one of the sequels. I think it'd feel like a hard mode at that point. Like I said, the second time around I beat the game within an hour, and it wasn't just because I learned the stages. It's because I learned to Mega Man. And I have to imagine that similar benefit was seen for many back in the 80s, where they learned to Mega Man with the first game, and really started to rock the Mega Man in the sequel. Mega Man 2 is hard. But I guess that's what I get for playing the game on difficult mode. Mind you, I don't tend to play old games on difficult mode, but everybody and their mother said difficult mode was the default mode in the Japanese version, and thus that's what is meant to be played by us. And to that I say, no. There's a reason they added an easier mode in the US version and called it normal, and that reason was because Mega Man 1 was hard as heck and didn't sell well, so they needed to make this game easy and accessible for newbies. All of you trying to make an argument that the box art on Mega Man 1 was the reason it sold bad rather than the difficulty need to take a good look at this box art and tell me with a straight face that this box art is what pushed the sales over the million copy mark. It was obviously the difficulty that made Mega Man 2 better. You know how I know? Because I'm a newbie. I played the difficult mode and I absolutely despised this game. And then I played the normal mode, and oh my god, I think I'm officially a Mega Man fanboy. And I didn't make the same mistake as I did with Mega Man 1. I actually recorded my second playthrough of this game because this time I wanted respectable footage rather than a compilation of me getting my butt kicked that I'd have to edit around. Anyway, after Mega Man 1 didn't do quite as well as Capcom had hoped, it was seemingly done for. But the team that was passionate about making a sequel was given permission to work on the game on their own time. So Mega Man 2 was in essence a passion project. In a similar vein to many other series, the second game in the series is where the shine really started to show. It was a glorious success, and around the time the nostalgia cycle was kicking in, so too was the dawn of foundational internet opinions. Donkey Kong Country 2 would be considered the greatest 2D platformer of all time. Ocarina of Time would be considered the greatest early 3D game. And Mega Man 2 would be considered the greatest Mega Man game in a series that had 6 NES titles that looked the exact same. Now I'm not saying these games didn't deserve the titles they were given. So where do I fall in this discussion? I don't think the cover art had much to do with Mega Man 1 not being considered a success. The game was hard, and Mega Man was very difficult to control. He slipped and slid anytime you wanted to get him moving or to come to an abrupt stop. Mega Man 2 refined his controls. So while Mega Man 2 has literally the exact same controls as the first game, it feels much better to play. But that's not enough. During the first game, the first playthrough put me through the ringer. I hated it. Such a cheap game with easy knockback and all these unreasonable challenges that made me want to pull my hair out. But the second time around I played it with some mastery of the levels and challenges, as well as knowing how to defeat all the bosses. Not only did I enjoy the game significantly more, it cut the time it took me to beat it in half. I was confident I had learned to Mega Man, so I figured I'd be able to handle Mega Man 2's difficulty mode that so many YouTubers and forums have claimed is the right way to play and enjoy the game. And well, I'm officially convinced people on the internet lie. Just like everybody lied about beating the Yellow Devil without using the pause trick. Generally, before I finalize my scripts, but after I finish playing the games, I like to watch some videos from the popular YouTubers about the games to see if there are any points I had overlooked that I felt passionately about enough to discuss. In most cases, it might lead to a short instance where an important point of the story was missed or an important game mechanic was ignored in my script, so I address it. But it's rare that I actually make edits though, because I don't want to just regurgitate talking points for the sake of regurgitating them. But after playing this game, I started watching all these Mega Man 2 reviews and heard every single one of them say the exact same thing. That the difficult mode was what they were basing their retrospective off of because the normal mode is too easy, and the difficult mode is also easy enough to get through. This was a sentiment shared by even people making videos of their first time playthrough experiences. But what I noticed in a lot of those videos is all of the footage they were showing said otherwise. I could tell based off the amount of hits a simple enemy was taken that they were playing in normal mode, or the amount of big weapon or health regenerators being dropped, or the conveniently timed transition screens when they'd face a main boss to avoid having any footage of how they probably use the rewind feature. I know they did this because I make YouTube videos where I lie about what I do too. Oh wait, no, how'd that get in my script? Anyway, so I actually think these videos I watched were very useful, and I wouldn't be surprised if they did eventually find the difficult mode easy and just didn't have footage of it. That's not the point of this. The point is that I genuinely wonder how many people made the same mistake I did, and started to question why they were so crap at Mega Man 2. Like, I can't be the only one to go through this mess. And mind you, I'm one of those gamer boys. I have more controllers than I have friends. I can beat difficult games. That isn't my issue. But I'm playing Mega Man 2 for the first time and taking the advice of all the popular YouTubers and jumping on difficult mode only to get my mega butt kicked. Did that not happen to anyone else and make them question their gaming competence? My first playthrough took me like 3.5 hours. My second playthrough only took me 1, and it's literally because I played it on normal. And I know this because as I was shooting the enemies and passing through various challenges, I still felt like I was being tested, but I no longer felt as though the game designer was trying to ruin my day. Rather, I was having fun. I was able to hold on to my E-tanks and use them at useful points, defeat enemies and recharge on respectable amounts of ammo and health regenerators, and most importantly, absolutely annihilate everything in my path with Metal Man's Saw. Seriously, the Saw was my weapon of choice for the second playthrough, and it turned the game into a joke. The whole concept of experimenting with different weapons is non-existent in Mega Man 2, because on difficult mode, you can barely change weapons to find out what the correct attack to use is on a regular enemy or a boss without getting killed immediately. And on normal mode, if you figure out how good the Saw is, nothing else in this game will ever be worth your time of day. In Mega Man 1, my second playthrough was fun because I had experimented a bunch in the first playthrough and learned how to get through various challenges with my arsenal. That's not really the case in Mega Man 2, outside of a few things like the air attack one-shot killing jumping machines that Sniper Joe's are riding on. As a newbie to the Mega Man series, I'm willing to write a thesis statement on my defense of my claim that the only reason Mega Man 2 is as revered as it is because everyone that bought it on the NES played it on normal mode, figured out the Saw was strong as heck, barely lost any ammo as you spammed it, and was able to shoot in 8 directions. So of course they enjoyed this game. You weren't just Mega Man, you were a Mega Man! Also in 1989, there weren't any big first-party games being released, so Mega Man 2 got a huge chunk of the Nintendo Power magazine, and I'd say that is the main reason the Mega Man franchise is as big as it is today. But anyway, moving on from all of that, the gameplay is almost the exact same as the first, but there are 8 bosses this time around. There are E-tanks that refill your health and you can carry 4 of them at a time, but you will lose all of them if you get a game over. There are also 3 items you can use to unlock as you progress through the game, rather than the magnet gun. They're basically horizontal and vertical moving platforms to give you a crutch, but are mostly just required in the endgame. Thankfully, there's no singular item you must find without any guidance that is required, like the magnet beam was in the first game. But don't worry, there are other points in Mega Man 2 that will screw you over if you don't have the knowledge of how to accomplish a challenge ahead of time. I have no idea what this somber ending is from a story perspective, but I was jiving with it. I was a broken man, a shell of my former self. I could have walked the 4 seasons right next to Mega Man when I finished this game on difficult. I don't know why people online think it's a good idea to tell people to go through difficult mode first. It's terrible advice. If you want to enjoy Mega Man 2 the way it's meant to be enjoyed, as a Mega Man game, blind, without a guide, and without suggestions, then difficult mode is a terrible way to start because there are points that will artificially pad out the game by 50% more than intended due to the need to farm and stingy nature of item drops on difficult mode. I can concede that normal mode is probably too easy, especially if you hang tight onto the metal saw. But to that I ask, why wouldn't you hang on to the metal saw? Honestly, if I do a third playthrough of this game, which, let's be frank, I probably will after this video is done, I'm probably going to run it on difficult but only with a metal saw. It's there and it's available. I don't see a point to artificially challenge myself more for this game in particular. Because this is a huge series with many games, many of these horrid game design decisions are fixed in future titles. I don't know how people can consider Mega Man 2 the best game in the series. because I can't possibly imagine the upcoming games to have the items as broken as the metal saw, or traps as terrible as the blue beam turret fight. Those aren't minor details to scoff over. They're big deals. They're as bad as a silver ball puzzle in Sonic 06, for goodness sake. And you know what? Oh god, I just realized I am hating on this game way too much and I'm starting to sound like a Sonic fan. It's still too soon since I finished that series. You know what? Never mind, guys. This game was super fun. Make sure you play it on normal and use the metal saw. Despite the fact that it was a rush title, I felt like Mega Man 3 was the first one in the series that didn't drive me mad. Don't get me wrong, there are definitely flaws, and I think if anything, my feelings are more indicative of the issues Mega Man 1 and 2 had rather than a praise for the third title. It's still a fun game to run through, it has a decent enough challenge as you get through the first 8 stages, and I thought the bosses provided a good challenge in all of those stages. But the problem was the bosses felt like they were easy enough where you could probably get through most of them without putting much thought into the weapon you're using. I never really felt at any point in time that I truly had to come back and repeat a boss fight after getting a specific weapon. You could probably run through most of the game with just a pea shooter, to be honest. Or likewise, as you get more weapons, you could probably use almost all of them at any specific time and they'd all be useful. So while it was a fun game to run through, the significance of the strengths and weaknesses of the enemies and weapons available were mostly an afterthought. This is the first game in the series that I don't feel the need to beat a second time. Because in my first playthrough I felt comfortable enough that by the end of it I didn't feel like I needed to use any of my knowledge to drastically alter my experience in a second playthrough. Now I did really enjoy going through the 8 stages, with 1 or 2 exceptions. The issue was that after the 8 stages you get to what I believe are referred to as the Dock Robot stages, which are basically just 4 stages that rehash some of the set pieces from earlier stages, but with a bit more difficulty. I didn't really feel like these stages necessarily added much to the overall game. I didn't mind them too much, nor did I feel like they were crazy difficult. But the problem is, in each stage there's 2 Robot Masters, and there's some kind of variation of the bosses from Mega Man 2. So obviously you have to now figure out which weapon to use against which Robot Master, since you don't have your Mega Man 2 arsenal handy. The problem is, while the first 8 bosses were an easy and fair challenge for the most part, the Dock Robots were absolutely terrible to face off against. They were too strong, and when using the item they were supposedly weak against, they're beatable, but it's a challenge. And it's an annoying challenge, because up until you get to the second boss in the stage, because now each stage has 2 bosses, any earlier death takes you back way further than you expect, so you'd have to repeat a lot of the stage. And since the stages are a rehash of the earlier ones you beat, the game starts to get too repetitive and boring due to how much time you might spend on these Dock Robot stages. I think the difficulty of the Dock Robots isn't the worst thing in the world, I just wish the weapons they were weak against were a little bit stronger, and that you'd have a checkpoint right outside their room so you don't have to repeat a fight without redoing the stage. In an ideal scenario, the main 8 robots would have been almost as difficult as the Dock Robots, and their weaknesses would have been a lot stronger. If that were the case, I'd say Mega Man 3's 8 stages would have perfectly followed the Mega Man formula. Instead, as it stands, it's a fun adventure, with a very hard second act. So difficult that in general, most people recommend skipping them altogether. And I think if I was to play Mega Man 3 again, I wouldn't bother with anything past the first 8 stages. Because after you get pushed through the ringer and finish with the Dock Robots, you're greeted with a third act that's more similar to Mega Man 1 and 2, making the amount of stages in this game about 1/3 more than the length of the first 2 games. I was actually really annoyed when I saw I'd have to go through a Dr. Wily endgame after what I endured through the Dock Robot stages, but then I had it all complete within like 20 minutes. It was too easy. In general, the Wily stage designs were very simple, and they also had health and ammo pickups splashed around the stage. Plenty of E-tanks too, and in this game you could hold up to 9, so it made the endgame a joke. I'll admit, during my first 12 stages, I burned through E-tanks anytime I got them because I did face a challenge in those stages, but in Wily's Tower, I was using them for fun just because of how much the game was providing them for me. The other thing that really made the endgame easy was Rush, Mega Man's robotic dog companion. Rush replaces the generic weapons from Mega Man 2 and gives you a surfing rocket you now have control of, a spring you can use to bounce to high spaces, and a submarine that works like the surfing rocket but it's underwater. The submarine was used like once, maybe twice, but the Rush rocket and coil largely took away any semblance of challenge in the endgame, and honestly made a lot of the earlier game easy too. By the time I got to the boss rush, I was bored of this game. It felt like it was starting to drag, and that's 100% because of the combination of the time I spent in the Dock Robot stages and how painfully easy the endgame stuff was. The boss rush was also super easy because the robot bosses are already pretty defeatable, but now they're a flat out joke with all the health regeneration available, and the fact that you have a full inventory of weapons and can clip them away with their weaknesses even quicker. Even Dr. Wily was beatable in a couple minutes, probably even less than that. Anyway, to summarize, I think the first 8 stages are fun and offer a good challenge, but don't offer a good implementation of the Mega Man formula. The second 4 stages have bosses that are way too hard and will probably turn me away from revisiting this game, and the final endgame is laughably easy. In future playthroughs, I might just do the 8 stages. The colors and sprites are a great improvement over Mega Man 2. It's funny because while all these games look the same, you can see these ever so slight improvements with the visuals as you move through them. The music in this title slaps. Mega Man has some terrific tunes. It's no wonder they're used in so many YouTube videos. And most importantly, this is the first game in the series to include Mega Man Slide. It does take just a bit of time to learn its timing and figure out how to properly utilize its chain of slides, but once you figure it out, it becomes a very useful part of your movement and allows for more strategy during encounters with enemies and bosses. It feels like a natural addition to the moveset and is implemented well in the game. All things considered though, I did enjoy this game. And I was able to enjoy it enough with a single playthrough, which is the first time for this series. I mean, it had its bad moments, but like I said before, it didn't absolutely drive me mad at any point in time like Mega Man 1 or 2 did. I feel like it dragged on just a bit with the Wily stages at the end. The Doc Robot stages were a little bit too hard, but after beating those, I don't think I needed any more to play. But all in all, this game is a game of 3 acts. The 8 stages that I thought were enjoyable enough to run through and I wouldn't mind revisiting. The Doc Robot stages, which I'm glad that I accomplished, but I'll probably never play again. And the end game that it felt like was a waste of 30 minutes of time due to how easy it was. I've always heard that Mega Man 2 was the sweetheart of the franchise. I think there's been claims from some that Mega Man 3 is as well, and I definitely am in line with that. The inclusion of Rush and the slide move alone make this a more complete title than Mega Man 2. And the 8 robot stages are all actual real stages instead of something that's too gimmicky like Quick Man stage. And on a similar note, while I don't think that the weapons in Mega Man 3 are balanced, I think they're much more balanced than what was on hand on Mega Man 2. But at the end of the day, when looking at the first 3 titles at least, I'm getting similar vibes I did as when I played the Donkey Kong Country series, in that I don't feel like these games have drastically changed enough with each inclusion to really separate them and rank them. Rather, I think it's worth just playing through all of them, since on a repeat playthrough you could probably get through 3 of them in 1 or 2 sittings. Either way, from 1987 to 1990, Nintendo owners got these 3 games for the NES, and they cemented their legacy of the franchise going into the 90s. Mega Man 4 wouldn't see a release in the US until early 1992. As always, thanks for watching.